Hey guys, tonight we slip into a warm, flickering space where the world softens at the edges and where your only responsibility is to follow the gentle glow of a goddess who decided long ago that peaceful warmth beats heroic chaos any day. You find yourself standing at the edge of Hestia's hearth, yes, the primordial hearth of Olympus, watching the fire rise and fall in a slow, steady rhythm that feels like it's syncing with your breathing. Sparks drift upward as if they're bored of gravity, and the stone floor beneath your feet seems pleasantly warm, like a heated tile floor in a very fancy spa. Don't get too comfortable yet, though. You probably won't survive this without at least one god launching a dramatic monologue your way. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Go ahead and drop your location and local time below too. I love seeing where everyone's listening from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stand beside the hearth, and from the very beginning, you can tell this place operates differently from the rest of Olympus. No thunderbolts popping off, no wine fountains bubbling out of control, no dramatic transformations where someone screams, "Who touched my sacred olives?" Just a warm circle of light spreading across smooth marble and a faint wood smoke scent that somehow doesn't irritate your eyes. Historians still argue whether the ancient Greeks imagined this fire as literal or more symbolic, but whatever its nature, you feel it humming with quiet confidence. Hestia isn't rushing anywhere. She doesn't sweep in with a golden chariot, doesn't toss lightning or brandish a trident. She simply sits or stands near the flame, tending it with slow, practiced motions. You notice her robe has a soft, practical drape, something you could absolutely nap in, and she looks at you like she's been expecting you, but not in a creepy, omniscient way. More like a friendly neighbor who keeps the porch light on so you don't trip over the steps. The mainstream historical fact drifting into your mind is this. In Greek religion, Hestia was the goddess of the hearth, domestic order, and the sacrificial flame. She was central to every home and every public building, and in many cities, her sacred fire was never allowed to go out. You'd think such an essential goddess would spawn tales of epic battles or high-stakes rescues, but nope. Hestia's greatest drama usually involves someone asking nicely for her blessing while she nods peacefully. Of course, mythology being mythology, you do catch odd little moments. Quirky tidbit surfaces. Some ancient writers described Hestia's hearth fire as burning without producing smoke at all, as if Olympus operated on some kind of premium clean energy plan. The idea of a magical zero-emissions fire might sound futuristic, but hey, leave it to a goddess to invent eco-friendly vibes millennia early. You shuffle closer, feeling your steps slow as the heat seeps into you. Even the air feels thick with calm. If you were expecting some explosive hero entrance, you're out of luck. Here, everything radiates steadiness. Hestia, tending the flame, hums softly just a few notes, like someone absent-mindedly stirring a pot of soup. You half expect her to offer you a wooden spoon and ask you to help stir, but she just gives you a patient smile. "You came at a good time," she might say, if she were the chatty type. Everyone else is busy causing unnecessary problems. And wow, she's right. From your quiet vantage point, you can hear faint echoes drifting through Olympus Ares muttering about some battle he could be fighting, Dionysus laughing at a joke only he understands, Hermes zipping past in a blur because he has about 12 deliveries to make in the next minute. Meanwhile, here at the hearth, the most intense activity is a fire crackling like it's trying to tell a bedtime story. You stretch a hand out toward the warmth. The fire crackles approvingly, and you feel tension leave your shoulders. Even if you didn't know who Hestia was when you arrived, your body seems to recognize her domain on instinct. She's the goddess of home. Not a specific home, but the idea of home. The comforting center of life. The place where drama slows down enough for you to breathe. It's funny. Plenty of myths involve flashy transformations, people turning into trees or constellations, or the occasional unfortunate barnyard animal. but Hestia's signature transformation is basically watching wood become glowing embers. You're not sure if that counts as magic or just very patient housekeeping. A breeze drifts across the courtyard outside, sliding gently through an open archway. You can hear it brushing past columns, carrying the faint scent of olives and thyme. As it meets the hearth, the flames sway just a little, leaning toward you as if they're trying to say hello. The lighting in the room shifts, warm gold deepening into amber. You feel almost weightless, like someone's turned your internal volume knob down to the gentle, barely awake setting. Remember that reality check from earlier about not surviving? Well, here's your first test. Zeus sneezes somewhere in the distance. The ground shakes for a moment, dust trickles from the ceiling, but the hearth doesn't flicker. Not even a little. If Hestia had a catchphrase, it would probably be something like, "Not my problem," delivered with the serene energy of someone sipping tea in a storm. You watch her adjust the fire with a bronze poker slow, smooth, unhurried. Sparks drift upward like lazy fireflies. She glances at you again, and you swear she's trying not to smirk. Maybe she's amused that you came here expecting adventure. Or maybe she finds mortals adorable when we pretend we understand divine housekeeping. Another fun detail nudges at your thoughts. The ancient Greeks often placed Hestia first in rituals, first offering, first invocation, first blessing. Yet, she's widely considered the least dramatic Olympian. It's like the universe collectively decided, let's start with the dependable one before everyone else shows up and tries to turn the ceremony into a group project gone wrong. Even now, you can sense the order she maintains. The room feels balanced, stable, like the architectural equivalent of a deep exhale. You shift your weight and feel the floor's warmth pulse up through your legs. You glance toward the door of the great hall. No one barges in, no one yells, no one demands a prophecy. The peace is almost suspicious, but in a good way, like finding an empty aisle at the grocery store during peak hours. Hestia motions gently toward the hearth, inviting you to sit. The stone bench is warm, not hot, not cold, but that perfect temperature that makes you appreciate whoever invented heated seating, even if it was a goddess thousands of years before electricity. You rest there as the fire's glow softens your eyelids. The flame rises, falls, rises again, hypnotic and steady, as a metronome set to sleepy lullaby. A thought flickers through your mind. If every myth had this pacing, heroes would probably take more naps and fewer reckless quests. But that's exactly why Hestia stands apart. She embodies the quiet moments, meals shared, fires tended, conversations whispered over embers. She's the pause between adventures, the gentle reset that stories forget to celebrate. And right now, you're sitting in the warm heart of that pause. You're still perched beside the hearth when the light shifts, brightening just enough to tell you that Olympus is easing into one of its strangely calm mornings. Morning is relative here, of course. The sun rises whether Helios is feeling dramatic or not, but today the rays spill through the archways with an uncharacteristic gentleness, like they're trying not to wake anyone. You stand, stretching a little, and when you turn toward the rest of the palace, you walk straight into the slow, sleepy choreography of the gods' morning chores. Yes, gods have chores. You didn't expect that, did you? You probably imagined divine beings waking up perfectly groomed with breakfast already plated on golden platters. But no, Olympus operates with the mild chaos of a hotel lobby at 6 a.m., and you're about to wander straight through it. First, Hermes zips by, hair sticking up in 17 different directions like he just rolled off a cloud. He's muttering something about delivery backlogs and some mortal losing another sandal. He barely notices you, which is good because you're not emotionally prepared for the cosmic equivalent of someone on their third cup of coffee. Historians still argue whether Hermes actually had a morning routine or if he simply existed in a state of perpetual errands, and watching him now, you're leaning toward the latter. You step aside as he blurs past again and drift into the wide corridor leading toward the communal hall. The marble floor is cool under your feet, but the air grows warmer the farther you go. Not because of magical heating, but because, fun fact, the Greeks imagined the gods living alongside hearths and braziers just like humans. Olympian architecture wasn't all lightning motifs and floating thrones. Sometimes it was just cozy. You catch a glimpse of Apollo polishing his lyre with the seriousness of someone prepping for a concert only he knows about. Beside him, Artemis ties her hair with a strip of leather, ignoring her brother's humming. This is the closest thing the divine twins have to getting ready for the day. Artemis gives you a brief nod, a silent hey, before returning to her calm, rhythmic motions. For someone associated with wild forests, she's surprisingly composed in the mornings. Then there's Ares, lounging against a pillar, shining his armor with a cloth that looks suspiciously like part of an old tunic. Morning, he grunts, which is honestly a high honor coming from him. His armor gleams like a freshly washed car someone's definitely going to scratch later. A quirky tidbit, you recall. Some ancient vase paintings show Ares with mismatched armor pieces, which makes you wonder if even gods lose track of their stuff sometimes. You can almost hear him mutter, "Where did I put my good greaves?" But amid the bustle, one figure moves with absolute clarity. Hestia. She's the only one whose motions form a steady rhythm, smooth steps, careful gestures, an aura like warm bread steam drifting through the room. While everyone else multitasks disastrously, Hestia performs a simple circuit, checking small hearths along the corridor, straightening a stray cloth, adjusting a flame that flickers too high or too low. You follow her because she's the only one not vibrating with manic morning energy. A small hearth sits beside a ceremonial niche, and Hestia kneels to tend it. The fire responds instantly, brightening a shade as if greeting her. You notice she doesn't use tools this time, just her hand hovering above the flame, coaxing it with that quiet authority she carries like second nature. And here you are, trying to look casual while thinking, okay, how is her robe not catching fire? Maybe it's divine fabric. Maybe she just has impeccable technique. Historians still debate whether her fire symbolized pure domestic order or the boundary between mortal and divine life. Watching her now, you feel both interpretations settling comfortably in your mind. A faint smell of baking bread drifts in from the kitchens, warm and yeasty, and your stomach makes a noise that echoes embarrassingly loudly in the marble hall. Hestia hears it and gives you a glance that somehow manages to be both amused and deeply non-judgmental. If she had a catchphrase, it might be, "Mortals need snacks." And honestly, she wouldn't be wrong. A kitchen servant passes by, carrying a basket of figs. He pauses when he sees Hestia, bows slightly, and she places her hand over the basket, blessing the morning meal with a small nod. This isn't dramatic divine magic, no sparkles or thunderclaps, just a quiet gesture that makes the figs look inexplicably juicier. You're tempted to steal one, but stealing produce in front of a hearth goddess feels like the ancient Greek version of stealing office lunch from the break room fridge. Just no. You wander into a broad courtyard where Olympian wind chimes, yes, they have those tinkle softly in the breeze. The air feels so clean you're convinced someone installed a filtration system. A cluster of minor deities is sweeping, watering plants, and tidying up after what appears to have been a very rowdy late-night gathering. Dionysus stumbles out of a side door wearing a grapevine that looks like it lost a fight with a vineyard. He squints at you like you're the sun itself and then wanders off to find something hydrating. You wave politely, unsure of what the etiquette is for seeing a god in rough morning mode. Meanwhile, Hestia's presence shapes everything. You notice how the courtyard's central hearth glows brighter when she walks by, how the gods instinctively step around her without crowding, how even the breeze seems to soften. Her quiet influence is the unsung architecture of Olympus, the thing holding the mood together so breakfast doesn't turn into a celestial food fight. One mainstream historical detail floats up. In Greek households, the hearth was the anchor of daily life used for cooking, warmth, sacrifice, and hospitality. Every morning's first fire was lit with care, and every visitor was greeted with an offering at the hearth. No hearth meant no home. And here on Olympus, those rhythms are magnified into something both sacred and familiar. And then a quirky memory strikes. Some ancient sources mention that if a family moved houses, They carried embers from their old hearth to light the new one, partly to honor Hestia. Imagine moving day but with fire safety turned into a religious art form. As you walk beside her, you see why she's essential to Olympus's daily functioning. She doesn't chase heroics. She prevents chaos by simply maintaining order, the way a well-run kitchen prevents half the household from losing its minds. She embodies the soothing predictability that makes everything else possible. Without her, mornings here would devolve into divine pandemonium before breakfast. You catch one last glimpse of the gods' morning routines. Zeus yawning so widely that thunder murmurs from somewhere above. Hera adjusting her crown with regal grace as if she didn't just wake up 5 minutes ago. And Athena reading 3 scrolls at once because of course she is. But amid all that energy, chaotic, earnest, dramatic, Hestia remains steady. And you? You're drifting in her wake, following the quiet glow that makes Olympus feel less like a fortress of lightning and more like a place where you could actually sit down and breathe. The morning continues gently, and you find yourself settling into the rhythm, soothed by the most unexpected revelation. Even gods have sleepy mornings, and the calmest among them keeps everything from unraveling like an ancient cosmic sweater. You follow Hestia down another quiet corridor, the kind lined with polished bronze lamps that never seem to run out of oil. The brightness shifts as she passes, almost like the flames lean toward her in recognition. You trail behind at an easy pace, partly because she moves slowly, partly because rushing in her presence feels like trying to sprint in a library possible, but deeply wrong. You step into a small circular chamber where the ceiling opens to the sky. Morning light pours down in a wide column, illuminating the main hearth in the center. Hestia pauses there. Not dramatically, she doesn't do entrances, but with the calm certainty of someone who knows exactly where she belongs. And this, you realize, is it? The center, the still point, the quiet around which everything rotates? You settle onto a low stone bench, warm again, seriously. Does Olympus have heated seating everywhere? And observe the goddess who somehow commands the room without doing anything outwardly commanding. You've met dramatic gods, flirtatious gods, competitive gods, gods who treat reality like a stage play they're auditioning for. But Hestia? She radiates a different kind of presence altogether, a presence built on stillness. She glides a hand over the fire, making tiny adjustments as casually as someone fixing a crooked picture frame. The flame shifts subtly, settling into a shape that looks impossibly symmetrical. You're not sure how she does it. Magic? Experience? Immortal level tidiness? Historians still argue whether Hestia's power was purely symbolic, or if people genuinely believe she physically tended every sacred flame across Greece. Watching her now, you suspect the truth sits somewhere in the middle. She doesn't force order. She encourages it to happen. You notice that the room feels different from the bustling hall you left behind. There's an equilibrium to it, an invisible balance that makes you breathe a little deeper. The air smells faintly of pine resin and warm clay. A soft draft flows from the open ceiling, brushing your skin with a chill that somehow doesn't make you shiver. It all blends into a serene sensory cocktail, warmth below, coolness above, and a steady flame in the center. You shift your weight, listening to the faint crackle of burning wood. Hestia's eyes flick toward you for a moment, warm and patient, as though she's silently reminding you to slow down, to notice, to be here. You clear your throat, which seems almost too loud in this quiet chamber, and your mind drifts into a mainstream detail you've picked up along the way. Hestia was one of the original Olympians, technically older than many of the gods who get more screen time. She was there before the flashy thunder gods, the war gods, the gods who keep accidentally turning mortals into plants. She predates the chaos, the drama, the endless magical misunderstandings. And instead of grabbing a spotlight like her siblings, she chose to stay at the hearth, tending the fire at the heart of Olympus. It's like being the oldest child in a huge theatrical family and choosing to be the responsible one who keeps the house from burning down. Literally. And here's your quirky tidbit. Some ancient comedic poets joked that Hestia never left her post because she didn't trust anyone else not to mess things up while she was gone. Imagine a goddess who worries the way your grandma does when someone else loads the dishwasher incorrectly. Honestly, it fits. You can see her glancing around Olympus, muttering, "If I step away for 5 minutes, someone is going to set the laurel trees on fire again." Her quiet efficiency becomes more obvious as you watch her work. She doesn't rush. She doesn't even appear to move quickly enough to accomplish anything. And yet, every small gesture ripples through the room. She brushes dust from the hearth lip, and the air steadies. She straightens the wood, and the glow warms. She adjusts the fire, and suddenly the entire chamber feels more balanced, like she's subtly tuning the atmosphere. You lean back as she circles the hearth with measured steps. There's a meditative aura to it. You feel your shoulders dropping into a relaxed slump. The tension around your temples melts like wax near a flame. The rhythm of her movement becomes predictable in the best way, no surprises, no sudden shifts, just continuous, peaceful motion. You could fall asleep right here if you weren't trying to look like a respectful guest. Your mind drifts again, wandering through the quiet corners of myth. Scholars often note that Hestia rarely appears in dramatic stories because her role isn't about spectacle. It's about maintaining the quiet equilibrium necessary for life to unfold. You realize now that she's not passive, she's foundational. The center of the wheel, the stone in the pond before ripples even begin. Without her, nothing else works. A distant clatter echoes down the hall, probably Ares dropping something metallic again, and Hestia barely flinches. She closes her eyes for half a second, takes a breath, and resumes tending the flame. You can practically hear her internal monologue, "Not my circus, not my chariot race." You watch as she dips a small clay cup into a basin of clean water. She pours the tiniest amount onto a burning cedar twig, sending up a single soft plume of fragrant steam. The smell wraps around you woodsy, faintly sweet, soothing in a way that feels instinctual. It reminds you of sitting near a campfire on a crisp night, or that magical moment when the oven door opens and warm air hits your face. Your senses lean into it. The fire brightens in response, and you swear it grows quieter too. As if it's adjusting itself out of respect, you glance at Hestia again and find that she's already looking at you, her expression calm enough to slow your heartbeat by sheer proximity. "What do you see?" she might ask if she broke her serene silence. And you'd answer, "Order." Not the rigid, overbearing kind, but the gentle kind that lets you relax. The kind that makes chaos feel far away. She steps back, wipes her hands on the edge of her robe, and gives you a small nod as though to say, "Yes, exactly." A question bubbles up inside you. Doesn't she ever want adventure? Doesn't she ever crave the thrill of a heroic quest? But as you watch her, really watch her, you understand. This is her adventure. This is her quiet triumph. Every steady flame, every peaceful morning, every warm room is a victory over the discord that constantly tries to seep into the world. Hestia's strength isn't loud, it's stable. You remember a scholarly debate you once heard. Some argue that Hestia's stillness reflected the Greek ideal that true power doesn't seek attention, it simply endures. Others claim her stillness symbolizes the essential role of home in Greek life. And then there's the more whimsical theory that she just preferred not to get caught up in the divine soap opera that was the Olympian family dynamic. Watching her now, you're voting for all three. Another breeze sweeps through the chamber, ruffling your hair. Hestia steps away from the hearth and motions subtly for you to follow. You rise, feeling lighter somehow, as if her quiet presence buffed the rough edges from your thoughts. You take a final glance at the central flame and notice something strange. You can't tell whether it's brighter or whether you are simply calmer. Maybe both. Maybe that's exactly how her influence works. You smile faintly, thinking that if every story had a Hestia, heroes everywhere would probably make fewer reckless decisions. But you don't linger too long. She's already walking, and you step into her gentle orbit again, following the goddess who proves that stillness can be its own kind of power. You trail after Hestia through a narrow passageway that curves like the inside of a seashell. The kind of architectural flourish only gods with unlimited time and marble budgets could dream up. The sound of the crackling hearth fades behind you, replaced by a low rumble that grows louder with every step. It's the unmistakable timbre of Olympians arguing grand, echoing, and sprinkled with enough ego to power a small city. Hestia gives you a look over her shoulder. Not annoyed, not alarmed, just resigned. The expression of someone who has walked into the same argument every day for millennia and knows exactly how it's going to go. You recognize the look instantly. It's the same face teachers make when they walk into a classroom full of unsupervised 10-year-olds. You step into the grand hall and immediately understand why she's needed. The room is gorgeous. Of course, lofty ceilings painted with mythic scenes, columns carved with spiraling olive branches, sunlight scattering across polished marble like flakes of melted gold. But none of that matters because two gods are standing nose to nose in the middle of it. Ares and Apollo. Of course, Ares is insisting that his sacred spear is missing. Apollo is insisting that he has absolutely no interest in touching a weapon that smells like last week's battlefield. Hermes zips around in the background, pretending to help look for it, but mostly eating grapes and trying not to get caught. You glance at Hestia, expecting at least a flicker of irritation, but she remains perfectly still. You can almost hear her internal sigh. These two again. The argument swells. Ares rants about sabotage. Apollo accuses him of misplacing things, like always. A nearby nymph covers her ears, and even Athena, who usually loves intellectual sparring matches, looks like she'd rather be reorganizing her scrolls. The entire room vibrates with dramatic energy. And then Hestia moves. Not quickly, not forcefully. She simply steps toward the center of the hall, the same way someone might step into a kitchen to check on simmering soup. You follow cautiously, wondering what her strategy is. You expect a wise speech, or a glowing aura, or maybe even a divine shimmer, something impressive. Instead, she kneels by a small hearth inset near the stairs. A hearth so unobtrusive you didn't even notice it at first, and adjusts the flame by a fraction of an inch. The temperature of the room shifts. The air steadies. The echo softens. Ares inhales mid-complaint. Apollo's posture loosens. Hermes, mid-grape, pauses like a guilty toddler. No one says anything, but you sense the argument deflating like a balloon with a tiny pinprick in it. Then Hestia speaks. It's one sentence, spoken quietly, not magically amplified, not repeated with echoing divine resonance. Just a calm, even-toned question. Did you check behind the shield rack? Ares blinks. It's actually comedic to watch this towering war, God brought to a full stop by a suggestion that obviously should have been step one. He marches over to the shield rack, muttering about how he definitely looked there already, and then you hear him say, "Oh, because yes, of course, the spear is right there." Apollo winces sympathetically. Hermes snorts so hard he nearly chokes on his grape. The tension in the room dissolves faster than butter on hot stone. Ares shuffles back, holding the spear with the subdued embarrassment of someone caught accusing his sibling of theft when the missing item was literally behind a door. "Thanks," he mutters. It's as close to an apology as he's emotionally capable of. And Hestia? She just smiles. That soft, warm smile that makes you feel like everything will be okay, even if you personally did absolutely nothing to help. You realize in that moment that this is her diplomacy. Not flashy speeches, not epic interventions, just presence. A steadying warmth that works its way into the cracks of divine egos and gently, quietly closes them. You take a seat near the hearth she just adjusted, leaning into the mellow heat. It's like slipping into warm bathwater after standing too long. Your pulse slows, your shoulders ease. Even the marble floor seems to hum at a more relaxed frequency. A mainstream historical fact pops into your mind. In many Greek cities, disputes, especially domestic ones, were settled near the hearth. Not because the fire had legal authority, but because the hearth symbolized fairness, neutrality, and the calm of home. It grounded people. Watching Hestia now, you see exactly how that tradition might have begun. A quirky tidbit slides into your thoughts too. Some ancient households supposedly placed tiny figures of Hestia near dining tables because the presence of the hearth goddess was believed to reduce arguments during meals. You picture someone in ancient Athens shouting, "Stop fighting! You're disturbing the Hestia figurine!" Honestly, it probably worked. The gods disperse slowly, each one cooling down like overheated teapots. Apollo drifts back toward the sunlight. Ares stomps off to polish his spear with extra vigor. Hermes offers you a grape because he clearly feels guilty for laughing, and Hestia just tends the fire again. You watch her, fascinated by how minimal her movements are. A tiny adjustment to the wood, a nudge of a coal, the placement of a small bowl of aromatic herbs that release a fragrant curl of smoke. Everything she does whispers instead of shouts. Historians still argue whether Hestia's diplomacy was rooted in symbolic ritual, where fire represented purification, or in social custom, where the hearth simply provided a calm space for debates to cool down. But you're beginning to think the real secret is her energy. She's the gravity well of tranquility, the unstoppable force that meets the immovable object and gently suggests, "Let's all take a breath." As the room settles, a pair of satyrs wander through with brooms and start sweeping up stray olive leaves from last night's festivities. One of them accidentally knocks over a jug. Before it can shatter, Hestia flicks her wrist slightly, and the jug rights itself, landing perfectly upright. You blink. She didn't rearrange gravity. She didn't freeze time. She just nudged the universe. The satyrs stare for a beat, nod respectfully, and continue sweeping. You stand, stretching again, feeling like you've witnessed a masterclass in conflict resolution. No lecturing, no power flexing, no yelling. Just calibrating the atmosphere until everyone stops acting like they skipped breakfast. You glance at Hestia, wondering if she ever gets tired of being the emotional glue of Olympus. But when she looks back at the fire, the soft curve of her mouth tells you she wouldn't trade it for anything. Her strength isn't in conquering, it's in keeping the flame steady, in keeping the world warm enough for life, conversation, and community. You follow her as she leaves the hall, heading toward another small hearth that needs tending. The drama behind you fades into a pleasant murmur. You can't help but think that every workplace, home, and friend group could use a Hestia, someone whose quiet presence makes arguments shorter, rooms warmer, and mornings easier. Who knew diplomacy could look like this? You inhale deeply, letting the warmth settle deeper into your chest, and step once more into the glow of her calm orbit. The deeper you follow Hestia into Olympus, the more you realize the entire mountain is stitched together by an invisible thread of warmth. Not heat warmth, the kind that softens the edges of a long day, the kind that turns stone into home. You expected the inner corridors of Olympus to be dramatic, shimmering halls, ostentatious fountains, engraved walls bragging about various heroic exploits. And yes, those things exist, but here, deeper in Hestia's domain, the grandeur is quieter, gentler, the kind of beauty that doesn't pose. It simply is. You turn a corner and nearly stumble over what looks like a mortal kitchen. A divine kitchen, technically, but still, a kitchen. Rustic wooden counters, clay jars labeled in flowing Greek script, copper pots polished to a warm shine. You blink hard, half expecting it to vanish like an illusion. But the scent of herbs, thyme, bay, oregano, settles in your lungs too solidly for it to be anything but real. Hestia moves through it like someone returning to her favorite chair. She picks up a ladle, stirs a simmering pot, and hums a melody that feels older than written language. When you approach, she gestures to the pot with a dip of her chin, inviting you to look inside. You peer over the rim and see what looks like a simple broth, shimmering gold in the firelight. But the aroma, God's, it hits with the softness of warm bread and the brightness of fresh citrus, with an undertone of something that feels like coming home after a long journey. You murmur something like, "It smells incredible," but your words come out half melted. Hestia smiles one of her rare, slightly mischievous ones and ladles a small portion into a clay cup. You take a sip. It tastes like the exact moment winter turns to spring. Warm, yes, but also bright. A flavor that isn't trying to impress you, it just welcomes you. While you're trying to understand how soup might be emotionally therapeutic, someone else enters the room behind you. Their footsteps are soft, almost hesitant, and when you turn, you find Demeter at the threshold, brushing a stray stalk of barley from her hair. "Oh, good," she says, in a tone that implies she has arrived exactly where she meant to be. "I smelled the broth." You sense a familiarity between the two goddesses that's different from the usual Olympian dynamic. Less sibling rivalry, more lifelong friend energy. Demeter walks over, kisses Hestia on the cheek, and starts gathering herbs without needing to ask where anything is. "I thought you'd be in the fields," Hestia says, still stirring gently. "I was. But Persephone wanted to try planting a new variety of pomegranate, and then I realized I hadn't eaten since dawn. And then I thought, I bet Hestia is cooking something comforting today. And look, here we are." You watch, fascinated. Olympian interactions are usually loud, theatrical, or dripping with barely concealed competitiveness. This is two women who have known each other long enough to skip all the performance. Demeter plucks a sprig of something green and drops it into the pot. The broth glows brighter. You aren't sure if that's metaphorical or literal. As they work side by side, you recall the historical notes you once read. In many Greek households, the hearth fire was used for communal meals that symbolized unity. Sharing food wasn't just nourishment, it was sacred, a sign of peace. Dining in the presence of a hearth signaled the end of conflict, the beginning of community. Here, the idea is alive. You can feel it in the air. Demeter takes a cup of the soup, inhales deeply, and sighs. "Why is your food always the final answer to every problem?" "It's not," Hestia says. "You just have a tendency to skip meals when you're anxious." Demeter points her cup at her in agreement. "That is true." They share a look that says, "We've had this conversation for thousands of years, and you suspect they have." You wander a little, not wanting to disturb them, but also trying to absorb every detail of the place. You notice a shelf filled with small clay charms, tiny hearths, miniature pots, carved wooden spoons. Some are elegant, most are gloriously lopsided, clearly handmade by mortals. Offerings. A quirky fact emerges from your memory. In some regions, families offered handmade kitchen tools to Hestia during festivals to thank her for providing warmth and safety. If a child carved a spoon or shaped a small hearth figurine, it was believed to bring blessings to the home. You gently lift one charm shaped like a crooked little saucepan. Hestia glances over her shoulder, sees it in your hand, and her expression softens even more. "A little girl in Corinth made that," she says quietly. "Her father brought it here during a famine. They survived the winter." You put it back with a new sense of reverence. Demeter finishes her soup and places the cup in the sink, then presses her forehead to Hestia's temple, a gesture so tender it almost feels like you should look away. "Thank you," Demeter murmurs. Hestia squeezes her hand. "Eat something substantial later." "I will," Demeter promises, though you're not convinced she'll remember. She gives you a polite, warm nod before leaving the kitchen in a rustle of wheat-scented air. Silence settles again, but not empty silence. Comfortable silence. Hestia ladles a bit more broth and offers it to you wordlessly. You take it because saying no feels like saying no to kindness itself. You sip again. It's like your ribs unclench. Finally, she speaks. "People assume the hearth is about fire," she says, her voice low and steady. "But it's about nourishment, not just food time, attention, gentleness, the things that hold life together." You swallow, the warmth blooming through your chest. Hestia brushes a lock of hair behind her ear and adds, with a humble shrug that somehow makes her divine, "Most things can be mended with a warm meal and a patient ear." You think about that? You think about how much of mortal life, family gatherings, celebrations, reconciliations happens around warmth and food. You think about ancient feasts, bowls passed hand to hand, the sound of laughter echoing off stone walls. You think maybe she's right. She stirs the pot again, and you watch the steam rise in soft curls like prayers. In that moment, You understand why Hestia is the first goddess honored in every ritual and feast. Not because she demands it, because she deserves it. Because without her, the world would be cold, functional, but not alive. You finish your cup, exhaling through your nose like you've just slept 9 hours. And then Hestia says, "Come, there's something I want you to see." You follow her again, deeper into Olympus, past the kitchens and quieter hearths, toward a glowing doorway that pulses like a heartbeat. You don't know what lies inside, but absolutely know it will be warm. When you step through the glowing doorway, you expect another tranquil chamber, maybe a sitting room, maybe a storage place for divine ladles, but instead, you find yourself in what can only be described as the beating heart of 100 ancient kitchens. The room is warm, but not stifling. The air smells faintly of rising dough, crushed olives, and the smoky sweetness of freshly baked figs. You hear the predictable crackle of a steady flame and the softer rhythmic sounds of mortar against pestle. Every sense hums at a low, comforting frequency. Hestia moves ahead of you with the easy familiarity of someone walking through her own memories. She gestures to a stone counter where a cluster of small clay bowls rests, each filled with something that looks delicious in a very "I'm not trying to impress you" way. Lentils glossy with oil, roasted chickpeas, a mess of herbs that would make any modern chef weep. "These are offerings," she says. "Not the grand festival kind, the everyday kind." You lean closer. The bowls aren't fancy. Some are chipped, some are gloriously lopsided. A few have fingerprints baked right into the clay. They look like they were shaped by real people with real, imperfect hands. The kind of people who had lives to live farming, trading, raising children, weaving cloth, complaining about goats, and still took a moment to leave something warm for the goddess who watched over their meals. You picture a woman in an ancient Greek village ladling a bit of stew from the pot and setting it aside with a whispered thanks. A child sneaking a fig into the offering bowl, hoping Hestia likes it. A grandmother stirring a pot and murmuring a blessing for a smooth evening. Small gestures repeated across centuries. "Food is a story," Hestia says, as though she's responding to your thoughts. Every bowl, every loaf, every cup of wine has a reason behind it. Sometimes celebration, sometimes grief, sometimes habit. She picks up a piece of bread from one of the trays, tears it in half, and hands you a piece. You bite, half expecting it to dissolve into divine sparkles, but it tastes normal, ordinary, gently chewy, lightly salted, with a whisper of smoke. Somehow that makes it all the more comforting. A faint echo of a mainstream historical fact pops into your mind. Ancient Greek households often began daily meals with a tiny offering to Hestia. A pinch of flour, a splash of wine, a bit of bread simple, almost meditative gestures that reminded everyone the home was sacred space. Here, surrounded by the faint shimmer of 1,000 such gestures, the fact feels less like trivia and more like truth. Hestia walks toward a wide, low hearth at the center of the room. A pot sits over the fire, bubbling gently. She lifts the lid, releasing steam that smells like an entire garden exhaling. "This," she says softly, "was once the way families told me about their days, through spices, through textures, through shared warmth." You kneel beside the hearth, watching the flames flicker. They don't snap dramatically like Zeus's lightning or rage violently like Ares' battlefield fires. They glow, patient, steady, exactly like her. A sudden thought nudges you a quirky tidbit you once read, the kind you weren't sure was real until this very moment. Some households believed Hestia tasted the food before anyone else, that a dish would only turn out well if she approved during cooking. You mention it, almost sheepishly, expecting her to laugh it off. She doesn't. She simply raises one eyebrow in a very, "And who do you think helped you avoid burning your rice last week?" sort of way. You cough lightly and decide not to pursue the topic. As you continue exploring, you notice a series of tiny alcoves carved into the walls. Each holds a miniature model of a hearth, a shrine to household gods. Their styles vary wildly. Some look Mycenaean, others classical, others rough and rural. You spot a few with African influences, or Phoenician touches, or designs resembling early Anatolian altars. You tilt your head. Not all worship stayed in Greece, Hestia says. Travelers carried habits with them. Food traditions move faster than politics. It's funny scholars still argue whether Greek hearth practices influenced neighboring cultures or whether similar traditions emerged independently. But standing here, you sense the connections. They're subtle, quiet, threaded through ordinary acts like lighting morning fires or sharing a pot of stew. Hestia notices your thoughtful expression. People always debate origins, she says, shrugging lightly, but they forget that kindness spreads without needing credit. You don't tell her historians are probably crying somewhere. She moves on, guiding you to a long stone table bearing objects used in ancient kitchens. A pestle worn smooth by generations of hands. A clay mixing bowl painted with little spirals. A spoon carved from olive wood, darkened from use. These were offerings too, she murmurs. Tools of care, tools of patience. You pick up the pestle. It's heavier than it looks, and somehow just holding it makes you feel connected to the countless meals prepared with intention and love. Meals were never just meals, Hestia says. They were relationships, apologies, promises, celebrations, quiet reconciliations over warm bread. You think of all the dinners you've eaten quickly, distractedly, without a second thought. Then you imagine a world where every simple dinner carried a small ritual of gratitude. Not because it was required, but because it reminded people they were safe and together. It feels nicer. Hestia circles to the far side of the room where a small, elegantly simple shrine sits slightly elevated above the rest. A few grain offerings rest at its base. The flame above it burns brighter than the others, still gentle, yet somehow deeper. This was from one of the oldest temples, she says, a place where priests didn't demand much from worshippers. They only asked them to be mindful, to share, to keep a peaceful home. You run your fingers over the smooth stone, feeling centuries embedded within it. One day, she adds with a faint smile, someone tried to bring me an entire roasted goat as an offering. I tried to explain that I prefer subtlety, but they weren't listening. You choke on a laugh. What did you do? I redirected the goat to Hermes, she says. He'll eat almost anything. You can't tell if she's joking. With Hermes, honestly, either possibility is plausible. You sit beside the central hearth again, watching the flames. Hestia kneels beside you, her expression soft and reflective. You asked why I prefer calm hearths over heroics, she says. This is why. This room, the memories in it, the quiet roles people play for each other. She stirs the fire with a long iron rod. The flames pulse softly. Heroes save cities, she says, but hearths keep people alive. You let that settle in your chest. The warmth, the simplicity, the truth. And then Hestia rises, dusts ash from her hands, and offers you a gentle nod toward another corridor leading out of the room. There's more to see, she says. If you're ready, you stand, feeling steadier than before. You follow her again toward new warmth waiting ahead. You follow Hestia through a narrow stone passageway, and as you walk, the soft heat of the kitchen fades into a gentler, more diffused warmth. The corridor opens into a space that feels immediately different, less like a temple room, more like the inside of a very old, very lived-in home. You pause on the threshold. This is not Olympus. This feels mortal. The room is shaped like a courtyard, though you can still see starlight shimmering through the high ceiling in the distinctly Olympian way. But everything else, the layout, the objects, even the dusting of ash around the hearth, looks like it belongs in an ancient Greek household. Not a grand palace, not a hero's villa, but an ordinary home. The kind where a pot might simmer all day, where children might argue over honey cakes, where someone might braid garlic to hang near the doorway for winter. Hestia steps lightly toward the center of the courtyard. At its heart sits a modest hearth pit, square and low, exactly like those found in classical homes. The fire inside crackles softly, and its glow pulses against the clay walls as if remembering thousands of evenings spent warming tired bodies. You said you wanted to understand why houses grew around me, Hestia murmurs. You nod, stepping closer as she kneels beside the fire. In the early days, she continues, a hearth wasn't a decoration. It wasn't even really a choice. It was the first decision. You built the rest of life around it. You crouch near the edge of the pit, feeling the warmth brush your shins. And suddenly you understand something basic, but something modern life tends to rush past. Fire isn't just a tool. Fire is a center, a gathering point, a survival mechanism disguised as comfort. A mainstream historical fact slips neatly into place. In ancient Greece, the hearth was often the very first structure established when building a home. Walls, floors, furniture all came later. The hearth dictated everything: where people sat, where food was prepared, how the house was shaped and oriented. Even the courtyard walls in front of you reflect that. They angle slightly inward, guiding attention back toward the flame. Hestia gestures around the room. Every house looked different depending on the family. But this, she taps the stone hearth, was always the constant. You can almost see it. A family circling close on winter nights, exchanging stories in low voices, someone stirring a pot before dawn while everyone else still sleeps, embers being banked carefully at night so the flame survives until morning. Then Hestia adds a detail you never expected. Some families believed that if their hearth flame went out unexpectedly, it meant change was coming. Not danger, just change. You blink. That's one you've never heard. A quirky tidbit that feels too specific to be invented on the spot. Hestia notices your expression. Mortals make meaning out of small things, she says with a fond shrug. Sometimes they're right. You step away from the hearth and notice a group of domestic items arranged neatly along one wall. Clay pots in various stages of use, a spindle and whirl for spinning thread, a loom frame half assembled, baskets of chickpeas and barley, a stone bench worn smooth by countless seated bodies. She points out a large, wide-mouthed clay vessel. That one held water that people used to douse the fire each night if they had to travel or if illness made tending difficult, but they always rekindled it as soon as they could. You run your palm across the jar's surface. It's cool, slightly rough. Someone once dipped their hands in here. Someone once carried water from a well, sloshing it carefully so it wouldn't spill on the dirt floor. It hits you then. This entire room is built of echoes. Echoes of hands, echoes of habits, echoes of rituals repeated not because they were dramatic, but because they made life function smoothly, peacefully. You turn to Hestia. People really centered everything around this? She nods. It wasn't about reverence. It was about practicality. Warmth, light, food, safety. The hearth solved every daily need. And because it solved so much, people naturally treated it with respect. She moves to a corner of the courtyard where a small alcove holds miniature clay figurines, household gods, offerings, tokens of family devotion. You recognize a few shapes: a tiny dog facing the hearth, a small female figurine with painted lines symbolizing fertility, a coiled snake, common guardian imagery in Greek households. This is what a home altar looked like, she says. Not a temple, not a sanctuary, just a space where gratitude could live. She lifts the tiny snake figurine, and you remember another odd bit of lore. Many Greek households kept real snakes near the hearth, believing they protected the home and symbolized renewal. You mutter this memory aloud, half expecting Hestia to deny it. Instead, she smirks. Not my idea, she says dryly, but I let them keep the custom. You try to imagine sharing your house with a friendly snake and decide that ancient Greeks were clearly built differently. As you explore further, you notice a small doorway that leads into what would have been the andron, the men's dining area. The threshold is only half a step up from the courtyard, but there's a definite shift in the air. The space looks more formal, with couches arranged symmetrically for symposia. Yet, even here, the hearth's influence lingers. Murals of banquets often include Hestia somewhere in the corner, a tiny figure bringing order to an evening known historically for wine-fueled debates and elaborate poetry recitals. Did you ever attend those? You ask. Hestia shakes her head with a smile. Too much talking. And Hermes always tried to sneak questionable jokes into the entertainment. You laugh softly. That tracks. She nudges you back into the courtyard, clearly uninterested in lingering in the symposium room, and guides you toward a niche where a large round stone sits atop crushed charcoal. It looks humble, unassuming, but Hestia touches it with a quiet reverence. This, she says, is a traveling hearthstone. Families use pieces like this to carry fire from an old home to a new one. Another historical truth surfaces. In many Greek regions, families moving houses or establishing new settlements would carry an ember from their original hearth, literally transporting the spirit and continuity of their home. You picture a family packing up their belongings, walking miles under a harsh sun, carefully protecting a tiny ember wrapped in cloth and clay, a symbol of continuity, a promise that home is more than a location. Historians still argue whether this tradition was universal, Hestia adds, lightly tapping the stone. Some say it was symbolic only in stories. Others claim it happened everywhere. She shrugs. But I watched thousands of families carry their embers, so I suppose I'll let scholars keep debating. You suspect she finds the whole academic argument adorable. You sit again near the hearth, letting the warmth seep into your knees and elbows. The fire crackles softly, and for a moment you feel a part of this long chain of homes, everyone shaped by flame, by routine, by the mundane miracle of people caring for one another in small, constant ways. It occurs to you that Hestia is not just the goddess of the hearth. She is the goddess of everything that stays steady while the world changes, of every habit that makes life gentle, of every flame that turns a shelter into a sanctuary, of every quiet thing you only notice when it's missing. Hestia stands and brushes her hands against her skirt. Come, she says softly. There's a different kind of hearth you need to see next. You rise, and the courtyard dissolves behind you like an old memory returning to ash. But you carry its warmth with you. The next hallway slopes gently downward, the air cooling in a way that feels intentional, like the mountain itself is asking you to pay attention. Hestia walks ahead with unhurried steps, her pace so steady it almost resets your heartbeat. The warm glow around her dims slightly, shifting from golden to a calmer, ember-red tone. She's preparing you for something different. Not darker, just deeper. You've seen the hearths built for home, she says over her shoulder. Now you'll see the hearths built for peace. The corridor widens into a chamber so large the far wall disappears into shadow. At its center lies a great circular hearth, wider than a chariot and built of polished black stone veined with gold. No pots hang above it, no food simmers within it. Instead, the fire burns low and incredibly steady, a patient flame that seems to hum with its own gravity. This is not a kitchen hearth. This is a boundary, a promise, a reminder. Hestia stops at its edge and rests her hand on the stone rim. Cities have their own hearts, she murmurs. This is one of them. You blink. A city hearth? She nods. Every polis, every city-state that understood how fragile peace can be kept a public hearth, a place where the flame never went out. A mainstream historical fact flickers through your mind. Every Greek city had a prytaneon, a civic building where the sacred fire of Hestia burned perpetually. It wasn't symbolic. It represented the life of the entire community. Officials met there. Ambassadors were welcomed there. Exiles were granted clemency there. Treaties were sworn beside its flames. You glance at the fire. It looks modest, almost shy, flickering just enough to remind you it's alive. But the stone circle around it vibrates faintly under your palm. This hearth is not shy. It is powerful in the way a boundary stone is powerful. Quiet, unyielding, essential. People think war is loud, Hestia says, her voice echoing softly in the vast chamber. But peace takes more discipline. You absorb that. The flame reflects in her eyes with a steadiness that tells you she's said something she's been waiting for you to understand. Sit, she says gently. You lower yourself onto a wide bench carved into the floor. The stone is warmer than you expected, as if countless generations have sat here, thinking the same thoughts, asking the same questions. Hestia steps around the hearth with deliberate care. When 2 cities sent ambassadors, she explains, those representatives were considered under my protection, safe, untouchable. They stood beside a public hearth like this one, so everyone understood. They were guests, and guests are sacred. Your mind flicks to the famous Greek concept of xenia, sacred hospitality. Zeus is usually credited for enforcing it, but seeing this space, you sense that Hestia was the silent architecture beneath those rules. Zeus may have punished violators, but Hestia created the environment where hospitality felt like law. She kneels, placing both palms flat against the stone. The flame brightens. There were times, she continues, when cities wanted bloodshed, wanted vengeance, wanted victory. She pauses. Yet, when someone stepped inside this circle, the desire for war had to wait. You imagine 2 fierce generals bursting into this room, armor clattering, tempers raging only to fall silent as the fire's warmth wraps around them like a parent's hand on a child's shoulder. Then Hestia's tone shifts, playful. Most of the time, Ares still tried to start arguments here. You wrinkle your nose. Even in a peace chamber? Oh, yes. He argued with Athena once for 2 full days. I wasn't impressed. You picture those 2 bickering like rival honor students in the world's most intense academic debate, and you can't help laughing. The sound echoes through the chamber like a dropped pebble rippling through a lake. Hestia smiles. There were other kinds of visitors too, she says more softly. People who had lost their homes, refugees from conflict, travelers without protection. They came to the public hearth because they knew I would not let anyone harm them. You feel that line settle inside your chest like a stone sinking gently to the bottom of a pool. Not dramatic, not heavy, just true. A quirky tidbit resurfaces. In some Greek cities, those who were ostracized, exiled through formal vote could request a final blessing at the city hearth. A symbolic way of saying, you're leaving, but your humanity stays acknowledged. You share this memory aloud. Hestia nods. Even when someone was cast out, they did not leave dishonored. They carried a sliver of the community's warmth with them. You glance at the fire, imagining a tiny ember being taken away, tucked in cloth, carried across rough terrain, hope wrapped in smoke. Historians still argue whether exile rites were truly compassionate or simply ceremonial, you say. They were both, Hestia replies. Mortals always try to decide whether something is practical or emotional when it is very often both. Touché. She rises, and the flames lift with her as though pulled upward by her movement. The whole chamber glows brighter. Stand with me, she says. You join her at the edge of the hearth. The warmth expands, brushing lightly against your cheek. Not intense, just noticeable enough that you feel alive. Then something unexpected happens. The fire dims and then expands outward into a faint, shimmering ring. It spreads until it outlines the entire room, forming a glowing circle that pulses with slow, heartbeat-like rhythm. Hestia glances at you, her face lit by the ring's gentle light. This is what a boundary looks like, she whispers. Not a wall, not a weapon, a promise. You watch the ring pulse, soft and steady, like the world's calmest lighthouse. This is why I avoid war, she adds. Not because I fear conflict, but because someone must stay at the center. Someone must hold the place others can return to when they're tired of fighting. The ring begins to fade, dissolving into harmless sparks that drift upward like fireflies. Hestia steps back and brushes her hands against her skirts. Come, she says. I want to show you where the embers go when a city begins. You follow her toward a smaller archway, the lingering warmth trailing behind you like a shawl. As you leave, you glance back at the public hearth, still steady, still glowing, still keeping watch over the room that never raises its voice. The fire may be quiet, but it holds whole worlds in place. You step through the archway Hestia gestures toward, and the world shifts again. The air is warmer now, and there's a faint scent of dried herbs mixed with smoke. It's a gentle reminder that even after witnessing divine order and city hearths, life is fundamentally tactile. Smells, textures, warmth, they anchor everything. Hestia leads you into a long corridor lined with niches, each niche containing a tiny ember resting on a bed of ash. The embers glow softly, some brighter than others, and you realize these aren't just random sparks, they're active hearths in miniature, each representing a household, a family, a moment in time. Mortals carry these embers when they move, Hestia says, her voice quiet enough to almost blend with the gentle crackle of the fires. From home to home, from city to city. It's continuity, more than magic. You kneel down, cupping one of the tiny flames in your hands. It's warm, insistent, like it refuses to vanish no matter how far it's carried. You imagine families walking miles, balancing clay vessels with embers nestled inside, faces set against wind and sun, each step a small act of devotion. A mainstream historical fact comes to mind. In some Greek cities, it was common practice to take a portion of the city's Prytanean fire when establishing a new settlement. This ensured that the new town's hearth had continuity with the old, symbolizing stability and protection from the goddess herself. You glance at Hestia. Did they really do this? You ask softly. All over Greece? She smiles faintly. Not everywhere, but in enough places to matter. She brushes ash from a small pedestal holding a particularly bright ember. Sometimes, I think mortals overestimate the danger of their journeys. Sometimes, they underestimate their need for home. A quirky tidbit crosses your mind. Some households reportedly whispered to their traveling embers as if the flame could hear them, asking for safe passage or blessings for the family waiting at the next stop. You try it quietly. Be safe, you murmur. The ember pulses as if acknowledging your words, and you can't help but smile at the connection. Hestia moves down the corridor, her hand brushing the niches. The glow shifts subtly with each touch, spreading a slow warmth along the stone walls. The hearth, she says, isn't about the fire. It's about the care surrounding it, the attention, the intention. You follow her to the final niche, set apart from the rest. Inside, a large ember burns brighter than the others. It radiates warmth that makes your chest feel pleasantly heavy, almost like it's filling empty spaces you didn't know existed. Hestia kneels beside it, her hands hovering above the flame. This is the city's heart, she whispers. Every ember you've seen is connected to this one. Each household, each family, each moment of life feeds into the center. And when a city's hearth is strong, its people feel safe. Even if they never see me, even if they never think about me. You reach out, careful not to disturb her rhythm. The heat is comforting, grounding. You feel a hum deep in your bones, an unspoken acknowledgement that the world, even chaotic, noisy, unpredictable, is held together in ways so subtle, most people miss them entirely. You remember a scholarly debate you read. Some argue that the symbolism of Hestia's flame was only ritualistic, while others insist the rituals themselves created psychological stability within communities. Standing here, you think both might be true. The ritual and the reality intertwined, inseparable as smoke and fire. Hestia stands slowly, dusting her hands on her skirts. I could explain every household, every ember, every nuance, she says, but sometimes understanding isn't the point. Feeling it is. You take a breath, letting the warmth soak in. The embers pulse gently, like the heartbeat of generations. The corridor seems endless, but also intimate, as if time itself has slowed to the pace of a patient flame. She gestures to a small doorway at the far end. Follow me, she says. There's a place where even the embers rest, where they wait before being carried to new homes. You rise and step beside her. Every footfall feels lighter than before. The air is dense with quiet purpose, a subtle encouragement that life, no matter how chaotic, is anchored by the small, deliberate acts that make it meaningful. As you walk toward the next chamber, you glance once more at the glowing embers. Each one is a tiny story, a whisper of warmth in an unpredictable world. And standing at the threshold, you feel a strange sense of ease, like an invisible hand smoothing the wrinkles in your thoughts. Hestia leads you into a small vaulted room at the corridor's end. It's modest, filled with faintly glowing embers in stone bowls and clay vessels. No grandiose display, no theatrical lighting, just the quiet power of maintained fire. The smell of warmth and earth is pervasive, calming. "This is where embers rest before journeys," she says softly. It's a pause, a preparation, a reminder that every hearth depends on care, patience, and continuity. You kneel beside one of the larger bowls, cupping the heat and watching it ripple like a miniature sundae. You realize slowly that Hestia's preference for calm hearths over heroics isn't about avoiding spectacle, it's about safeguarding life's subtle, essential rhythms. And here, in the glow of countless tiny flames, you understand what she's been showing you all along. Power needn't be loud, influence needn't be dramatic. True impact is steady, patient, and quietly nurturing. You sit for a while, letting the warmth wrap around you, preparing for the next leg of the journey, grateful for the unspoken lessons contained in firelight. You descend a few worn stone steps, your footsteps muffled by the soft echo of the corridor. Each step seems to carry you farther from the bustle of the world and closer to a quiet rhythm that exists only here in the soft shadows and gentle warmth of the chamber. The room that opens before you is circular, with walls polished smooth by countless hands over generations. Faint carvings of spiraling flames and simple household tools decorate the stone, subtle reminders of attention and care that humans have lavished on hearths for centuries. At the center of the room, a modest hearth glows with a steady, unhurried flame. Its warmth spreads slowly, brushing your hands and face, a quiet invitation to pause and breathe. The air carries a faint mixture of herbs and clean stone, a gentle scent that encourages you to settle in and simply exist without pressure or expectation. Hestia kneels at the hearth, her hands hovering above the embers, moving almost imperceptibly as she seems to converse with the fire itself. The flame flickers in response, like a patient, attentive companion. "This hearth," she says softly, "is for reflection and small, deliberate care. People gather here to notice the rhythms of daily life, to center themselves, and to cultivate patience." You trace the smooth stone rim with your fingers, feeling tiny grooves worn by generations of attention. You can almost imagine the households that once relied on these hearths not for drama or spectacle, but for gentle, steady acts that stitched life together. Parents teaching children to knead dough over the flame, elders arranging tiny clay figurines to mark intentions or milestones, neighbors stopping by for quiet conversation while the flame radiated warmth and calm. A mainstream historical fact comes to mind. Domestic Greek hearths were central to household life, not only for cooking and warmth, but also as spaces for ritual, meditation, and reflection. Their role extended beyond practical utility, fostering emotional and social stability within the household. A quirky detail drifts into your mind. Some families believe that carefully arranging small figurines of animals, tools, or symbolic objects around the hearth could carry subtle intentions or wishes. Whether or not the goddess Hestia truly noticed them, the act of care itself created focus, attention, and a quiet sense of accomplishment. Historians still debate how widespread this practice was, but standing here, you can feel the principle in action. Deliberate, gentle attention transforms even ordinary spaces into lasting sanctuaries. Hestia stirs the embers with a slow, deliberate motion. The flame responds with a soft ripple, almost like a nod. Heroics may dazzle for a moment, but hearths endure. They teach patience, attention, and the quiet satisfaction of steady care. She murmurs. You exhale, letting the warmth seep into your chest. The flame's soft rhythm echoes in your heartbeat. You notice the play of light on the stone walls, the shadows stretching and retreating in a calm, hypnotic dance. Each flicker seems to whisper a gentle reminder that life's quiet routines, the care we give, the attention we pay, The moments we pause are what truly endure. You feel yourself slowing, your mind softening, as though the very air has been infused with centuries of careful, patient presence. You settle onto the smooth floor beside the hearth, letting the soft heat brush your legs. The carvings on the walls seem almost alive, as if the stories of past hands and past intentions are reaching out to you through the flickering light. You imagine ancestors kneeling in similar rooms, arranging figurines, whispering hopes, sharing quiet thoughts, all under the watchful, patient flame of Hestia herself. There is no urgency here, no expectation of grand achievements, just presence, observation, and the gentle, ongoing rhythm of care. The flame continues its slow, hypnotic dance. You notice the subtle variations in color, the deep orange at its center, the gold flickers along the tips, and the faint blue traces where the air is coolest. Each tiny movement seems almost musical, a lullaby woven from light and warmth. You exhale again, letting the fire's rhythm sink deeper into your chest, your arms, your mind. Hestia leans slightly closer to the embers, almost as if she is sharing a secret. Heroics burn quickly, but quiet attention and patience leave lasting warmth. You close your eyes for a moment, letting your thoughts drift with the flickering light. The heat is soothing, the shadows calming, and the soft scent of herbs grounding. You feel a profound sense of continuity, how the care of countless generations hums quietly beneath your feet, in the polished stones, in the walls, in the air itself. There is comfort in this continuity, a gentle reassurance that steady attention, thoughtful presence, and deliberate care are more powerful and enduring than any loud or fleeting act. Hestia stirs the embers once more, and the flame rises slightly, then settles back into its steady glow. "This is the lesson of the hearth," she whispers. "Enduring care, gentle attention, and quiet observation can outlast the flashiest deeds. They are the true forms of heroism, the ones that touch lives softly but profoundly." You exhale slowly, feeling the warmth and rhythm settle deep into your chest. The flickering light, the soft scent, and the smooth stone around you become a gentle anchor. And for the first time, in what feels like forever, you are simply present. You imagine yourself here for hours, watching, breathing, and absorbing the soft, timeless lesson of the hearth. You follow Hestia through a gently arching doorway, the stones underfoot cool and smooth. The corridor opens into a vaulted chamber, larger than the previous one, and you immediately notice the soft glow of the hearth at its center. The flame is calm, its warmth spreading gradually across the room, brushing your skin like the faintest sunbeam at dawn. The air carries a subtle, comforting blend of smoke, lavender, and dried olive leaves, creating a sensation that is both grounding and calming. You pause for a moment, inhaling slowly, letting the aroma settle into your chest, as though the room itself is teaching you to breathe with deliberation. Hestia kneels beside the hearth, her fingers tracing the air above the embers without touching them. "This hearth," she whispers, "is for connecting life to ritual, to the gentle cycles that shape our days. It is a space to notice the passing of time, to mark the quiet rhythms that often go unseen." You lower yourself onto a smooth stone bench surrounding the fire, feeling the heat touch the back of your legs. The walls are adorned with subtle carvings of wheat stalks, olive branches, and tiny clusters of grapes. Each design is simple yet deliberate, like a visual lullaby, softly reminding visitors of the cycles of growth and harvest, of the quiet patience that brings results. You imagine families kneeling here generations ago, noticing the slow turning of seasons, offering small thanks, and arranging modest tokens of intention around the hearth. A mainstream historical fact drifts into your thoughts. Greek households and small communities often centered festivals and seasonal observances around hearths. These fires were not only practical, but served as anchors for rhythm, ritual, and reflection. A quirky detail: in some villages, people would walk gently clockwise around the fire, whispering small hopes or intentions to the flame. It was believed that the fire, attentive and patient, would absorb the sentiment and help it take root in the days ahead. Historians still debate whether this was widely practiced or mostly symbolic. But the image of countless hands circling a quiet flame fills the chamber with a soft sense of continuity. You reach down, letting your fingers hover over the warm stone edge of the hearth, and feel a subtle vibration not of the floor, but of presence, of centuries of attention and care accumulated in this very space. The flame flickers slightly in response, as though acknowledging your presence, and you exhale slowly, letting the warmth ripple through your chest. Hestia stirs the embers lightly. The soft crackle of wood and the gentle shift of smoke seem to echo through the chamber like a whispered secret. Heroics can dazzle for a moment, she murmurs, but this steady observation, thoughtful care, and gentle attention endures far longer. It teaches patience, mindfulness, and the subtle joys of everyday life. You close your eyes for a moment, letting your senses drink in the gentle rhythm, the soft crackle of the fire, the scent of herbs, the smooth stone beneath you, the muted glow on the walls. There is a sense of timelessness here, a quiet acknowledgement that the smallest acts, watching a flame, tending a hearth, noticing the subtle shifts of light and air, can ripple through days, months, and even generations. You exhale again, feeling the warmth settle deep into your chest. The soft flicker of the flame seems almost musical, rising and falling like a slow, comforting lullaby. The carvings on the walls, the faint scent of the herbs, and the gentle curves of the benches all contribute to a sense of stability and serenity. You realize that even the smallest, quietest acts of attention, adjusting a figurine, whispering a hope, simply sitting and observing, carry meaning that lasts far longer than dramatic gestures ever could. Hestia leans slightly closer to the hearth, her fingers hovering just above the embers. "This is the lesson of patience," she says softly. "Quiet attention, gentle care, and a steady rhythm outlast fleeting grandeur. That is the true strength of the hearth." You exhale, feeling the warmth, the scent, and the soft rhythm settle into your body. For the first time, you realize how fully you can be present, simply observing and absorbing the slow, enduring pulse of the flame. It feels like stepping into a gentle tide, one that carries both the past and the present, offering a subtle reassurance that steady care truly endures. You follow Hestia down a softly curving corridor, the stone underfoot worn smooth by countless footsteps over centuries. The air grows warmer and carries a subtle fragrance of dried flowers and gentle smoke. A large chamber opens before you, vaulted and airy, its walls adorned with faint carvings of intertwined vines and flowing streams. At the center, a ceremonial hearth stretches broad and low, its flame steady and rhythmic, casting gentle light that spills across the room in lazy, undulating patterns. Hestia kneels at the hearth, brushing her fingers over the cool stone beside it. "This hearth," she murmurs, "is for preserving intention and celebrating quiet milestones. It marks the small achievements, the daily progress, and the gentle cycles of life that often go unnoticed." You take a seat on one of the stone benches circling the hearth, letting the warmth brush the backs of your legs. The flame dances subtly, revealing textures and patterns in the walls you hadn't noticed before. Tiny carvings of animals, plants, and everyday objects create a tapestry of attention to detail, almost like a visual meditation. Each mark tells the story of someone long ago who noticed the subtle beauty in ordinary things, and you feel a connection to them through this shared rhythm of care. A mainstream historical fact: in Greek culture, ceremonial fires and household hearths were often used to mark personal and communal milestones, as well as seasonal festivals. These fires symbolize continuity, connection, and deliberate attention to daily and cyclical life. A quirky detail: In some households, small clay figurines representing wishes, dreams, or even playful reminders were placed near the fire, thought to carry their intent to Hestia. Historians still debate how common this practice was, but standing here, you feel the enduring principle. Careful attention and gentle repetition hold subtle power, whether or not the goddess notices. You reach forward, letting your fingertips hover above the smooth stone edge of the hearth. The flame seems to respond, flickering in a calm, measured rhythm. It almost feels alive, a gentle pulse that guides your own breathing. You exhale slowly, letting the warmth and soft light flow into your chest, and notice how even the quietest gestures, placing a figurine, whispering a thought, simply sitting and observing, carry meaning and care. Hestia stirs the embers lightly, and the fire responds with a soft, melodic crackle. Heroics may impress for a moment, she whispers, but steady attention, deliberate care, and mindful presence endure. They are the slow, quiet heroics of life. You close your eyes briefly, letting the combination of warmth, fragrance, and soft flickering light fill your senses. The carvings on the walls seem to ripple as the fire moves, telling stories without words. You imagine families centuries ago, pausing by similar flames, noticing the subtleties of the day, arranging small offerings, and quietly guiding one another through life's rhythms. Your chest rises and falls with the pulse of the flame. Each flicker becomes a gentle heartbeat, each soft hiss a reminder that slow, careful attention builds lasting continuity. The room feels alive, but in a gentle, soothing way, as though the centuries of human care have coalesced into a single, breathing presence that surrounds you. Hestia leans toward the hearth, her fingers just above the embers. "This is the power of the hearth," she says softly. "It teaches patience, reflection, and the enduring value of quiet acts. Everything you do with awareness ripples outward, softly but profoundly." You exhale once more, feeling the warmth sink deep into your chest. The flame, the carvings, and the subtle scent of herbs all seem to hum a lullaby. For the first time in a long while, you realize that being fully present, attentive, and gentle is its own form of heroism, slow, enduring, and quietly transformative. You climb a narrow, gently winding staircase, each step smooth and cool underfoot, the echoes soft and distant as if the building itself is exhaling with you. At the top, a small private chamber awaits, more intimate than any you've seen so far. The ceiling arches gently overhead, and the walls are pale stone, adorned with subtle carvings of leaves, birds, and simple household objects. At the center, a modest hearth glows quietly, its flames small but steady, casting soft, warm light that seems to hug the room. Hestia kneels beside the fire, her hands hovering lightly above the embers. "This is a hearth of personal reflection," she whispers. "It is a place to notice the small rhythms of life, to cultivate calm, and to learn patience through simple observation." You lower yourself onto the smooth stone floor, letting the warmth of the hearth reach your legs. The room feels protective, a tiny pocket of stillness separate from the outside world. You notice the faint carvings on the walls more closely. A bird perched quietly on a branch, a basket filled with fruit, a small tool resting against a hearth. Each detail is understated but intentional, like a visual whisper reminding you of the beauty and attentiveness in routine. A mainstream historical fact floats into your awareness. Private hearths in Greek homes were often used for meditation, household rituals, and quiet reflection. They were spaces where individuals could slow down, think, and observe, cultivating patience and awareness of daily life. A quirky tidbit. Some families whispered small intentions to the flames or placed tiny clay figurines around the hearth, believing that the deliberate care involved in these small acts could carry gentle guidance or focus to the household. Historians still debate how widespread this practice was, but standing here, you feel the principle of mindfulness in action. The deliberate attention itself shapes both mind and space. You reach forward and let your fingers hover above the smooth stone rim of the hearth. The flame flickers softly, responding with a gentle pulse that seems to echo your heartbeat. You exhale slowly, feeling the warmth seep into your chest and shoulders, a quiet tide of calm that radiates through your body. Each flicker of the flame becomes a small rhythm to follow, a lullaby of light and heat. Hestia stirs the embers lightly, and the soft crackle resonates like a whispered conversation. Heroics may be remembered briefly, she murmurs, but steady observation, patient care, and small, deliberate acts endure. That is the strength of a hearth. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the warmth, light, and soft scent of herbs envelop you. The carvings on the walls seem to shift subtly in the firelight, telling quiet stories of generations past who practiced the same gentle attentiveness. You imagine them kneeling here, observing, arranging small offerings, whispering thoughts into the flame, all while learning the soft power of patience. Exhaling once more, you feel the lessons settle into your body. The gentle rhythm of the flame, the smooth stone beneath your palms, the scent of herbs in the air, all coalescing into a quiet understanding. In this chamber, heroism is not grand or loud. It is slow, deliberate, and enduring, found in the patience and care that ripple gently through time. You leave the private chamber behind, descending a short, softly echoing corridor. The stones underfoot are smooth, worn by countless careful steps over generations. As you approach the next chamber, the space begins to open, the ceiling rising higher and the walls curving gently around a central hearth. This hearth is larger than any you've seen so far, circular and low, with flames that ripple slowly, steady, and welcoming. The warmth spreads evenly, brushing your legs and face in a comforting, unhurried wave. Hestia kneels at the edge of the hearth, her hands lightly stirring the air above the embers. "This is the hearth of continuity," she says softly. All the previous flames you've seen private, communal, ceremonial flow together into this one. It is a place to witness the quiet persistence of life, the steady rhythm of care and attention that spans generations. You sit on a smooth stone bench, letting the warmth seep through your clothing and into your body. Around the hearth, the walls are subtly carved with motifs of the sun, moon, and flowing rivers, reminders of time passing and cycles repeating. You can almost feel the gentle pulse of centuries here, each small flame of the past feeding into this one, creating a quiet, enduring energy. A mainstream historical fact. Greek cities and communities often maintained central or eternal flames as symbols of civic and domestic continuity. These fires mark the ongoing presence of families, neighborhoods, and shared culture, linking generations through attention and care. A quirky tidbit. Travelers sometimes carried a spark from one hearth to another, believing it connected distant communities through a shared flame. Historians still debate whether this was common, but the idea alone evokes a sense of gentle unity that stretches far beyond a single household. You rest your hands lightly on the stone edge, feeling the faint vibrations of countless quiet acts, the arrangement of tiny figurines, whispered intentions, careful observation, all converging into the steady pulse of this hearth. Each flicker of the flame seems to communicate a soft message. Patience matters, continuity matters, and the small, deliberate acts of attention create enduring warmth. Hestia stirs the embers again, and the flame responds with a subtle ripple, like a gentle nod. "Heroics may burn brightly and fade quickly," she whispers. "But steady attention, patient care, and mindful observation endure. That is the power of this hearth. It carries life forward quietly, reliably, like a soft, unending lullaby." You exhale slowly, letting the warmth settle deep into your chest. The carvings on the walls seem to shimmer gently in the flickering light. You imagine countless generations kneeling here, observing, arranging objects, whispering intentions, and simply being present with the flame. Each of their small acts of care has contributed to this gentle, persistent rhythm. You lean back against the smooth stone, letting the slow, even heat flow through your body. The steady flame, the quiet carvings, and the soft scent of smoke and herbs fill your senses. You feel a profound connection to the past, a sense of comfort in the idea that careful attention, deliberate patience, and mindful presence endure far longer than loud or dramatic deeds. Here, in the hearth of continuity, you understand that heroism is not always visible or celebrated. Sometimes, it is simply the quiet persistence of care, the slow weaving of generations through mindful attention. You follow Hestia through another softly arched doorway, the stone corridor narrowing slightly before opening into a wide, luminous chamber. The ceiling stretches high above, letting shadows dance slowly across the walls, which are adorned with delicate carvings of flames, flowing water, and winding pathways. At the center lies the Hearth of Integration, the largest and most expansive fire you have seen yet. Its flames rise gently and then settle, pulsing with a slow, hypnotic rhythm that seems to synchronize with your own breathing. Hestia kneels at the hearth, brushing her fingers just above the embers. "This is where all lessons converge," she whispers. "Every flame you have encountered, every quiet act of attention, every small ritual and reflection, everything flows into this hearth. It is a place to witness the continuity of care, observation, and presence across time." You lower yourself onto a smooth stone bench encircling the fire, letting the warmth of the flames seep gently through your body. The carvings on the walls seem alive in the firelight, depicting scenes of households, seasons, and communities linked by a network of hearths and small, mindful acts. You notice tiny figures of animals, tools, and offerings tucked into niches along the walls, each a symbol of intention, hope, or gratitude from generations past. A mainstream historical fact: in Greek culture, central or eternal fires often symbolize civic and domestic unity, representing both continuity and the collective attention of families and communities. A quirky detail: some people believe that leaving small objects near the flame or whispering soft intentions into it allowed the fire to carry those thoughts forward, preserving them quietly through time. Historians still debate how common this was, but the principle of attentive care resonates clearly. You rest your hands on the smooth stone edge of the hearth, feeling the warmth pulse faintly through the surface, a subtle reminder of countless quiet acts of observation and care. Each flicker of the flame feels like a soft heartbeat, a rhythm built from centuries of deliberate attention. You exhale slowly, letting the warmth settle into your chest and shoulders, carrying a calm sense of connection and continuity. Hestia stirs the embers lightly, and the fire responds with a delicate ripple, as if acknowledging your presence. "Heroics may burn brightly for a moment," she murmurs, "but steady care, patient attention, and mindful reflection endure. That is the essence of the hearth. It teaches continuity, presence, and the gentle power of small, deliberate acts." You close your eyes, letting the warmth, soft light, and subtle scent of herbs envelop you. The carvings on the walls seem to tell silent stories of those who tended their own hearths long ago, adding their small, careful gestures to a larger rhythm. You imagine yourself as part of that continuum, each quiet act of attention weaving you into the gentle pulse of generations. Exhaling once more, you feel a profound sense of stillness. The Hearth of Integration seems to embrace you, reminding you that patience, careful observation, and mindful care are the quietest forms of heroism, ones that endure far longer than flash or spectacle. Here, surrounded by warmth, light, and the subtle echoes of countless past lives, you feel a gentle, unhurried understanding of the slow, enduring power of presence. You rise from the Hearth of Integration and follow Hestia down a gently curving corridor. The walls are smooth, and the air carries a faint warmth, a subtle hum of calm energy that seems to settle in your chest with each step. At the end of the passage, a smaller chamber opens before you. Its ceiling is low and rounded, creating a cozy intimacy, and at its center sits a modest hearth. The flames are quiet, almost shy, flickering softly like a heartbeat, inviting you to slow down and settle into the gentle rhythm of the space. Hestia kneels beside the fire, brushing her fingers lightly over the edge of the embers. "This is the hearth of restoration," she whispers. "It is a place to regain focus, to notice small details, and to cultivate patience and calm. Here, life's hurried pace has no place." You lower yourself onto the cool stone floor, letting the gentle warmth of the hearth brush your legs. The walls around you are carved with subtle patterns of plants, flowing water, and delicate stars. Each design feels purposeful yet unhurried, like a visual meditation encouraging careful attention. You trace the grooves with your fingers, feeling the centuries of deliberate care and mindful observation embedded in the stone. A mainstream historical fact drifts into your awareness. Domestic Greek hearths often served meditative purposes, providing households with quiet spaces for reflection, introspection, and restorative practice. A quirky detail. In some homes, people whispered small thoughts or intentions to the flame, believing that careful attention alone could carry those wishes forward, even if the goddess herself remained silent. Historians still debate the extent of this practice, but the gentle principle of mindfulness is unmistakable here. You lean closer to the fire, letting its warmth seep into your chest. The flame dances slowly, each flicker a subtle reminder that slow, steady care creates enduring effects. You exhale softly, letting the rhythm of the fire synchronize with your own breathing. Hestia stirs the embers with a gentle motion, and the fire responds with a soft, melodic crackle. "Heroics may shine brightly for a moment," she murmurs, "but steady attention and quiet care endure far longer. They are the heartbeat of life, the subtle pulse that carries wisdom forward." You close your eyes, letting the warmth, light, and soft scent of the chamber envelop you. The carvings on the walls seem to shift gently in the firelight, almost like whispered stories from generations past, teaching patience, focus, and the enduring value of small, deliberate actions. You imagine countless people kneeling here, observing, adjusting figurines, or simply breathing with the fire, each act adding to the gentle rhythm that binds time, space, and attention together. Exhaling once more, you feel the slow, calming pulse of the hearth fill your chest, your arms, and your mind. Here, heroism is not loud or urgent. It is quiet, patient, and enduring a rhythm that carries forward, one soft, deliberate act at a time. You are part of this rhythm now, and the warmth of the hearth seems to affirm that even the smallest, quietest acts of care can ripple through generations. You leave the chamber of restoration behind, following Hestia down a corridor that curves gently like a river through stone. The air is warm and quiet, carrying the faint scent of herbs and the soft echo of your footsteps. Ahead, a chamber opens with a hearth that feels deliberately ceremonial, yet still intimate. The flames rise slowly, casting gentle, dancing light that stretches across the walls in lazy, mesmerizing patterns. The room seems to breathe with the flicker of the fire, inviting you to slow your own pulse and sink into the rhythm of quiet observation. Hestia kneels beside the hearth, her hands hovering lightly above the embers. "This is the hearth of transitions," she whispers. Here, people once marked changes personal, seasonal, or communal. It is a space to pause, reflect, and honor the cycles of life. You lower yourself onto a smooth stone bench, letting the warmth of the flames brush against your legs. The carvings on the walls are subtle yet intricate. Spirals representing the turning of the seasons, clusters of leaves and vines, and small, simple symbols of beginnings and endings. Each image feels like a soft, visual reminder that life is made of gentle shifts, small moments, and quiet continuity. A mainstream historical fact: Greek households and communities often used hearths to mark seasonal changes, personal milestones, or community events, recognizing the subtle cycles that shape human life. A quirky tidbit. In some traditions, people walk slowly clockwise around the hearth, whispering intentions or observations to the flame, believing the fire would carry their reflections forward. Historians still debate how common this practice was, but the concept of quiet mindfulness is clear. You rest your hands lightly on the smooth stone edge of the hearth, feeling the warmth and soft vibration from countless past gestures of care and attention. Each flicker of the flame seems to echo the gentle rhythm of time itself, slow and steady, encouraging your mind to mirror its unhurried movement. Hestia stirs the embers gently. Heroics can burn bright and fade quickly, she murmurs, but patient attention, deliberate care, and gentle reflection endure. Observing the cycles of life, noticing the small transitions, and honoring them quietly, these are the true lessons of the hearth. You close your eyes, letting the warmth, light, and soft scent of herbs envelope you. The carvings on the walls seem to shift with the flame, telling subtle stories of generations who marked beginnings, endings, and transitions in small, mindful ways. You imagine yourself walking slowly around the fire, whispering your own intentions, and feeling the centuries of care that have preceded you merge with your own quiet presence. Exhaling softly, you feel a sense of continuity settle deep into your chest. Each small gesture, each mindful observation, each gentle act of reflection ripples outward, joining countless others in a quiet, enduring rhythm. Here, in the hearth of transitions, you understand that heroism is not always loud or dramatic. Sometimes, it is the quiet presence that notices, honors, and sustains the cycles of life with patience and care. You move from the chamber of transitions into a slightly narrower corridor, the stone floor smooth and cool beneath your feet. The air carries the faint warmth of lingering embers from the hearths behind you, mixed with a soft scent of dried herbs that encourages slow, deliberate breathing. The corridor opens into a chamber that feels almost like a classroom of quiet attention. A shallow, low hearth sits at its center, its flames calm and rhythmic, flickering in a gentle, hypnotic pattern. Hestia kneels beside the fire, brushing her fingers lightly over the edges of the embers. "This is the hearth of apprenticeship," she whispers. "It is a place for learning patience, observation, and gentle focus. Here, skills are not taught with urgency or force, but through quiet attention and thoughtful repetition." You settle on a smooth stone bench circling the hearth, letting the warmth flow over your legs. Around the room, small niches hold tiny figurines, birds, tools, and symbolic objects, each one placed with careful attention. The carvings on the walls depict hands shaping clay, weaving baskets, and arranging herbs, emphasizing the slow, deliberate rhythm of practice. Every detail seems to encourage focus and mindfulness, inviting you to slow your thoughts and immerse yourself in the rhythm of careful attention. A mainstream historical fact. In ancient Greek households and workshops, young apprentices often learned skills by observing and mimicking their elders, gradually absorbing not only practical techniques, but also the values of patience, focus, and careful attention. A quirky detail. Some families whispered soft instructions or small intentions into the flame, believing that it could reinforce learning or guide the observer toward careful observation. Historians still debate how widespread this was, but the principle of gentle, attentive practice resonates clearly. You lean closer to the hearth, letting the warmth seep into your chest and hands. The flame pulses in a calm rhythm, a quiet heartbeat that matches your own exhale. Each flicker feels like a subtle lesson. Small, steady attention accumulates over time, teaching far more than hurried effort ever could. Hestia stirs the embers lightly, and the fire responds with a soft, melodic crackle. "Heroics may impress briefly," she murmurs, "but patient observation, careful practice, and steady attention endure." This hearth teaches that the quiet acts of learning are the true form of lasting strength. You close your eyes, letting the warmth, light, and scent of herbs envelop you. You imagine generations kneeling here, practicing small skills, whispering intentions, and observing the fire as it danced and flickered. Each quiet act of attention added to the rhythm of the hearth, creating a legacy of patience and careful presence. Exhaling slowly, you feel the steady, calm pulse of the hearth fill your body. The lessons here are subtle but profound. Skill, mindfulness, and enduring focus are cultivated not through urgency, but through gentle, deliberate acts repeated over time. You feel a sense of calm assurance that slow, attentive care is its own quiet heroism, one that ripples outward through both space and time. You leave the chamber of apprenticeship behind and walk down a softly winding corridor, feeling the smooth stone underfoot and the gentle warmth lingering from the hearths you've passed. The air carries a quiet, calming energy, scented faintly with dried herbs and soft smoke. Ahead, a new chamber opens a space that feels both intimate and communal. At its center, a low, broad hearth radiates a steady, welcoming heat. The flames rise gently, then settle, pulsing slowly, almost like a heartbeat, inviting you to slow your own rhythm and settle into the gentle flow of attention. Hestia kneels beside the fire, her hands hovering above the embers. "This is the hearth of community reflection," she whispers. "It is a space where people gather to observe, to listen, and to share insights quietly. Heroics may dazzle, but true understanding grows in calm presence and attentive observation." You lower yourself onto one of the smooth stone benches circling the hearth, feeling the warmth reach your legs. Around the room, carvings depict clusters of figures seated together, exchanging stories and quiet advice while tending to the fire. The walls are dotted with subtle motifs of intertwined hands, olive branches, and small offerings. Each detail evokes the soft power of shared presence and the gentle bonds created through thoughtful, unhurried interaction. A mainstream historical fact: in Greek households and small communities, hearths often functioned as spaces for calm discussion, problem solving, and reflection. Families and neighbors would gather around the fire to converse thoughtfully, building understanding and social cohesion in a slow, deliberate rhythm. A quirky detail: some households believe that whispering a concern or question to the hearth, or leaving a small symbolic object near the flame, could encourage clarity or insight. Historians still debate whether this was widely practiced, but the gentle principle is clear. Observation, reflection, and mindful attention cultivate understanding. You rest your hands lightly on the edge of the hearth, feeling the warmth and faint vibrations of past conversations, past reflections, past quiet gatherings. Each flicker of the flame seems to echo the soft rhythm of dialogue, patience, and listening. You exhale slowly, letting the heat, light, and subtle scent of herbs flow into your chest, slowing your mind to match the gentle pace of the fire. Hestia stirs the embers lightly, and the flame responds with a subtle ripple. "Heroics may impress for a moment," she murmurs, "but steady attention, careful listening, and patient reflection endure." This hearth teaches that the quiet sharing of thought and observation is one of the most enduring forms of wisdom. You close your eyes, letting the warmth, light, and gentle scent envelop you. You imagine generations kneeling here, sharing their observations, exchanging quiet insights, and simply being present with one another. The pulse of the fire, the soft carvings, and the calm atmosphere all contribute to a sense of continuity and connection that feels almost alive. Exhaling once more, you feel a profound sense of calm settle into your chest. Here, heroism is not about spectacle or urgency. It is quiet, reflective, and enduring, found in listening, observing, and participating in the gentle rhythm of communal presence. You are part of this rhythm now, and the hearth affirms that even the smallest acts of thoughtful attention can ripple quietly, shaping understanding and connection across time. You rise from the chamber of community reflection and follow Hestia down a gently curving corridor. The air is warm, carrying the faint, calming aroma of dried herbs and soft smoke, encouraging slow, deliberate breaths. At the end of the passage, a wider, vaulted chamber unfolds before you. Its walls are adorned with subtle carvings of flowing water, winding vines, and small resting animals. At its center sits the hearth of contemplation, broad and inviting, its flames flickering in a steady, rhythmic dance, casting gentle, soothing light across the room. Hestia kneels beside the fire, brushing her fingers lightly over the edges of the embers. "This hearth," she whispers, "is for deep reflection and gentle contemplation. It encourages patience, observation, and mindful attention to life's quiet currents." You settle onto the smooth stone floor, letting the warmth from the hearth reach your legs and chest. The carvings on the walls depict quiet moments, someone arranging small offerings, a parent guiding a child's hands, figures pausing to observe nature or the movement of light across the room. Each design is subtle yet deliberate, encouraging a slow, focused awareness of the world around you. A mainstream historical fact: Greek domestic and ceremonial hearths were often used as spaces for quiet reflection, allowing individuals and families to observe, contemplate, and process life's events in a calm, meditative environment. A quirky detail: some households believed that speaking a soft thought or placing a tiny symbolic object near the flame could help clarify intentions or illuminate a decision. Historians still debate how common this practice was, but the principle of quiet mindfulness and deliberate observation resonates clearly in this space. You rest your hands on the smooth stone edge of the hearth, feeling the gentle warmth and subtle vibrations of countless prior contemplations. Each flicker of the flame mirrors the rhythm of patient thought, a quiet heartbeat that encourages your mind to slow. You exhale softly, letting the warmth and light fill your chest, aligning your own breathing with the steady pulse of the fire. Hestia stirs the embers lightly, and the fire responds with a soft, melodic crackle. "Heroics may dazzle briefly," she murmurs, "but patient reflection, careful attention, and mindful observation endure. The quiet acts of noticing, pondering, and understanding are among the most enduring legacies of life." You close your eyes, letting the warmth, soft, flickering light, and faint scent of herbs envelop you completely. The carvings seem to shift gently in the glow, telling subtle stories of generations who pause to observe, reflect, and cultivate calm. You imagine yourself among them, adding your own quiet attention to the rhythm of the hearth, participating in a lineage of mindfulness and care. Exhaling slowly once more, you feel a deep, calming presence settle into your body. The hearth of contemplation reminds you that heroism is not always loud or visible. It is the gentle practice of noticing, reflecting, and attending carefully to the present moment. Even the smallest, most deliberate acts can ripple quietly across time, leaving a legacy of patience, focus, and enduring presence. You leave the hearth of contemplation behind, walking slowly down a gently curving corridor. The smooth stone beneath your feet feels cool, the air carries a subtle warmth, and the faint scent of dried herbs encourages each breath to be deliberate and slow. Ahead, a new chamber opens, smaller and cozier, with a low, round hearth at its center. The flames dance softly, flickering in a slow, hypnotic rhythm, casting gentle shadows that play across the carved walls. The room feels intimate, almost like a protective cocoon, inviting you to pause and settle into the steady warmth. Hestia kneels at the hearth, her hands hovering lightly above the glowing embers. "This is the hearth of personal reflection," she whispers. It is a space to notice subtle patterns, to cultivate calm attention, and to become aware of the small movements of life that often go unnoticed. You lower yourself onto the smooth stone floor, letting the gentle warmth brush against your legs. The walls are adorned with delicate carvings, tiny birds perched on branches, flowing streams, and small domestic scenes. Each detail is understated yet deliberate, as if each hand that carved it sought to teach patience, observation, and appreciation for subtlety. You trace a groove in the stone, feeling the centuries of quiet care and mindful presence embedded in the wall. A mainstream historical fact: drifts into your thoughts. Greek households often used hearths as spaces for private reflection and personal ritual, allowing individuals to slow down, observe, and cultivate mindful awareness in a gentle, unhurried rhythm. A quirky detail: some families would leave small tokens of intention near the fire, a pebble, a carved figurine, or a sprig of herb, believing that the deliberate act of placement, rather than the object itself, carried subtle meaning. Historians still debate how common this practice was, but the principle of mindful attention is unmistakable. You rest your hands lightly on the hearth's smooth edge, feeling its warmth pulse gently beneath your palms. Each flicker of the flame seems to mirror your own breath, a quiet heartbeat inviting stillness and presence. You exhale slowly, letting the warmth and soft light settle deep into your chest, filling you with a calm, steady energy. Hestia stirs the embers lightly, and the fire responds with a gentle ripple. Heroics may sparkle for a moment, she murmurs, but quiet attention, thoughtful observation, and patient reflection endure. The small acts of noticing and caring leave a lasting rhythm that persists far longer than sudden grandeur. You close your eyes, letting the warmth, soft light, and subtle scent of herbs envelop your senses. You imagine generations kneeling here before the fire, observing, placing small tokens, and practicing patient awareness. Their quiet presence blends with yours, creating a gentle continuum of care and mindfulness that stretches across time. Exhaling slowly, you feel a sense of serenity settle fully into your body. Here, in the hearth of personal reflection, heroism is found not in bold gestures, but in patient attention, gentle observation, and enduring presence. Even the smallest, quiet acts ripple outward, quietly shaping understanding, patience, and calm through generations. You rise from the hearth of personal reflection, feeling the warmth linger on your legs and chest as you follow Hestia down a softly winding corridor. The air is calm, scented faintly with dried herbs and the subtle smoke of previous hearths, encouraging a slow, measured rhythm to your breathing. Ahead, the corridor opens into a chamber with a high vaulted ceiling and walls adorned with subtle carvings of flowing rivers, gentle hills, and scattered stars. At the center, a broad hearth glows quietly, its flame steady and mesmerizing, casting soft shadows that dance lazily across the room. Hestia kneels beside the fire, her hands hovering just above the embers. "This is the hearth of seasonal awareness," she whispers. "Here, people once observed the subtle shifts in light, temperature, and nature. It is a place to pause, notice, and attune yourself to the rhythms of the natural world." You lower yourself onto a smooth stone bench circling the hearth, letting the gentle warmth wash over your legs. The carvings on the walls depict the passage of the seasons: blooming flowers, falling leaves, migrating birds, and ripening fruit. Each symbol is understated yet deliberate, encouraging patience and careful observation. You trace the grooves with your fingers, feeling the centuries of mindful attention embedded in the stone. A mainstream historical fact: in Greek homes, hearths were often focal points for observing seasonal changes, marking agricultural cycles, and maintaining awareness of environmental rhythms, connecting households to the broader flow of time and nature. A quirky detail: some families would place small symbolic objects or figurines near the hearth to represent seasonal transitions, believing these gestures encouraged harmony with natural cycles. Historians still debate how widespread this practice was, but the principle of quiet, attentive observation is unmistakable. You rest your hands lightly on the smooth edge of the hearth, feeling its warmth and the faint pulse of centuries of quiet attention. Each flicker of the flame seems to echo the gentle rhythms of nature, slow and measured, inviting your mind to slow alongside it. You exhale softly, letting the light and warmth sink deep into your chest, filling you with a calm awareness of time's gentle flow. Hestia stirs the embers lightly, and the fire responds with a delicate ripple. "Heroics may shine brightly for a moment," she murmurs, "but patient observation, deliberate care, and mindfulness endure. The quiet practice of noticing the world's rhythms is one of the most enduring forms of attention. You close your eyes, letting the warmth, flickering light, and subtle scent of herbs envelop you. You imagine generations kneeling here, watching the seasons, marking subtle changes, and adding small tokens or gestures to the hearth. Each quiet act of attention contributes to a gentle rhythm that persists across time, weaving patience, presence, and awareness into the very walls around you. Exhaling slowly, you feel a profound sense of calm settle into your body. Here, in the hearth of seasonal awareness, heroism is found not in spectacle, but in attentive observation and enduring mindfulness. Even the smallest acts of care ripple quietly, shaping continuity, understanding, and harmony across generations. You leave the chamber of seasonal awareness behind and follow Hestia down a softly curving corridor. The stone beneath your feet is smooth, worn by countless quiet footsteps over generations. The air carries a gentle warmth, mixed with the subtle scent of dried herbs and faint smoke from the hearths you have passed. Ahead, the corridor opens into a chamber that feels both serene and slightly ceremonial. At its center, a low, broad hearth radiates calm, steady warmth. The flames rise gently, then settle into a slow, hypnotic rhythm that seems to encourage your breathing to match its pulse. Hestia kneels beside the fire, brushing her fingers lightly over the edges of the embers. "This is the hearth of guidance," she whispers. "Here, people once sought insight, clarity, or quiet direction. It is a space for contemplation, gentle reflection, and mindful observation." You lower yourself onto a smooth stone bench circling the hearth, letting the warmth wash over your legs and feet. Around the room, carvings depict small figures pointing, listening, and quietly assisting one another. Symbols of paths, rivers, and stars appear alongside images of homes and hearths, suggesting guidance not as instruction, but as gentle accompaniment through the cycles of life. Each carving is subtle and deliberate, encouraging patience and careful attention to small details. A mainstream historical fact: in ancient Greek homes and sacred spaces, hearths often served as places for personal guidance, quiet counsel, or reflection on choices, allowing individuals to slow down and consider their actions carefully. A quirky detail: some people would place a small stone, figurine, or symbolic object near the hearth, believing it could anchor intention or provide subtle insight. Historians still debate how widespread this practice was, but the underlying principle of mindful attention remains clear. You rest your hands lightly on the smooth stone edge of the hearth, feeling the gentle warmth and faint vibration of centuries of quiet contemplation. Each flicker of the flame feels like a soft heartbeat, encouraging patience and careful thought. You exhale slowly, letting the warmth and light settle deep into your chest, filling you with calm, focused awareness. Hestia stirs the embers lightly, and the fire responds with a soft, melodic crackle. "Heroics may shine brightly for a moment," she murmurs, "but quiet observation, deliberate care, and mindful reflection endure. The small, attentive acts of noticing and understanding are among the most lasting forms of wisdom." You close your eyes, letting the warmth, light, and subtle scent of herbs envelop you. You imagine generations kneeling here, quietly seeking clarity, adding small tokens, and observing the flame as it flickers gently. Each quiet act contributes to a rhythm that extends across time, teaching patience, mindfulness, and gentle awareness. Exhaling once more, you feel a profound sense of calm settle throughout your body. Here, in the hearth of guidance, heroism is not found in spectacle or force, but in quiet presence, thoughtful reflection, and enduring attention. Even the smallest, most deliberate acts ripple softly across generations, shaping understanding, calm, and continuity. You rise from the hearth of guidance and follow Hestia down a softly winding corridor, the smooth stone floor cool beneath your feet. The air carries a comforting warmth, mingling with the gentle scent of herbs and faint smoke from the hearths you've passed. Ahead, The corridor opens into a chamber that feels both intimate and timeless. At its center sits the Hearth of Legacy, low and broad, its flames steady, pulsing in a slow, mesmerizing rhythm that seems to echo through the walls and floor. The room invites stillness, a pause to notice, reflect, and absorb the quiet continuity around you. Hestia kneels beside the hearth, her hands hovering just above the embers. "This hearth," she whispers, "represents the accumulation of generations of care, observation, and mindful attention. It is a space to feel the enduring presence of those who came before and to consider the quiet ways we leave traces behind." You lower yourself onto a smooth stone bench encircling the fire, letting the warmth flow over your legs and into your chest. The walls are adorned with subtle carvings of hands placing small offerings, figures tending hearths, and delicate symbols of home, family, and continuity. Each detail is understated but purposeful, encouraging a sense of calm, presence, and attentiveness. A mainstream historical fact: in Greek domestic and ceremonial practice, hearths often symbolize the continuity of household, family, and cultural traditions. They served as central spaces where past, present, and future intersected through quiet rituals and attentive care. A quirky detail: in some households, people place tiny objects or figurines near the hearth, believing that even these small, deliberate acts could leave a subtle imprint on future generations. Historians still debate how common this practice was, but the underlying principle of mindful presence and attention is clear. You rest your hands lightly on the smooth stone edge of the hearth, feeling the warmth and faint pulse of countless quiet gestures layered over centuries. Each flicker of the flame seems to carry a story, a whisper, a small act of care passed down through generations. You exhale slowly, letting the warmth, light, and soft scent of herbs fill you completely, anchoring you in the quiet rhythm of enduring presence. Hestia stirs the embers gently, and the flame responds with a subtle ripple, almost like a soft nod. "Heroics may shine brightly and fade quickly," she murmurs, "but steady attention, patient care, and mindful observation endure. The quiet acts of presence, of noticing, of caring, ripple through time, creating a gentle legacy that persists." You close your eyes, letting the warmth, soft flickering light, and calm scent envelop your senses. You imagine generations kneeling here, tending fires, placing small tokens, and practicing patient awareness. Each quiet act contributes to a gentle rhythm that persists through time, teaching continuity, mindfulness, and enduring presence. Exhaling once more, you feel the slow, steady pulse of the Hearth of Legacy fill your body. Here, heroism is not in spectacle or urgency, but in attentive, deliberate, and enduring care. Even the smallest, quietest acts ripple softly, shaping continuity, patience, and calm across generations. You rise from the Hearth of Legacy and follow Hestia through the final corridor. The stone beneath your feet is cool, the air carries a soft, lingering warmth, and the faint scent of herbs and smoke gently drifts around you. The corridor opens into a small, circular chamber, the final hearth at its center. Its flames flicker slowly and steadily, spreading warmth evenly across the room. This hearth feels different, complete, as if every previous lesson, every quiet act of attention, and every gentle rhythm you've experienced has culminated here. Hestia kneels beside the fire, brushing her fingers lightly over the glowing embers. "This is the hearth of culmination," she whispers. "It is a space to absorb all you have witnessed, to feel the continuity of care, patience, and quiet heroism that spans generations. Here, all previous teachings merge into a gentle, enduring rhythm." You lower yourself onto a smooth stone bench, letting the steady warmth flow into your body. The walls are carved with soft, intricate depictions of daily life, tending fires, arranging small objects, observing nature, and practicing patience. Each subtle detail evokes the timeless rhythm of quiet attention and mindful presence. A mainstream historical fact: Central hearths in Greek households often symbolized both continuity and culmination, representing the integration of family, community, and the enduring passage of care and tradition. A quirky detail. Some households believed that whispering final reflections to the fire or placing a final small token could consolidate intention and awareness. Historians still debate how widespread this was, but the essence of mindful conclusion is clear. You rest your hands lightly on the smooth stone edge of the hearth, feeling warmth and centuries of subtle, quiet gestures. Each flicker of the flame carries the echoes of careful observation, patient care, and enduring attention. Hestia stirs the embers, and the fire responds with a slow, melodic ripple. Heroics may blaze briefly, she murmurs, but steady presence, attentive care, and mindful reflection endure forever. You close your eyes, letting the warmth, soft light, and subtle scent of herbs envelop you. You imagine generations kneeling here, absorbing lessons, contributing small acts of presence, and becoming part of the gentle rhythm that carries through time. You feel yourself woven into that quiet continuum, a single heartbeat among many, steady, deliberate, and enduring. Exhaling slowly, you feel the rhythm of the hearth settle deep into your chest. Here, in the hearth of culmination, heroism is found not in spectacle, but in enduring, attentive presence. Every small act you witness, perform, or remember ripples gently across generations, a soft, quiet current of care and patience. Now, slow your breathing, letting each inhale and exhale match the gentle pulse of the final hearth. The warmth still lingers on your legs. The soft flicker of the flames gently illuminates your mind, and the faint scent of herbs drifts like a comforting lullaby. You are surrounded by centuries of quiet attention, patient observation, and deliberate care, each act echoing softly into the present. Imagine the carvings on the walls, the subtle images of daily life, of small offerings, of gentle gestures, all of them quietly shaping a rhythm that persists. You are part of that rhythm now, a thread woven into the fabric of enduring presence. Every inhale gathers calm, every exhale releases tension. The fire's pulse is steady, a reminder that quiet attention and deliberate care outlast the fleeting sparkle of heroics. Feel the warmth settle into your chest, your shoulders, and your back. The slow dance of the flames mirrors your heartbeat, encouraging ease and relaxation. Thoughts drift by gently, like leaves on a slow-moving river. There is no urgency here, only the soft, persistent rhythm of presence and patience. Let your mind rest on the continuity you've witnessed: the hearth of integration, the hearth of transitions, the hearth of guidance, and the hearth of legacy. Each one teaches that enduring heroism lies in the quiet, in the steady acts that ripple softly across generations. You carry a small piece of that rhythm with you now. Dim the rest of the world, soften your focus, and sink deeper into the calm. Let the warmth, light, and gentle rhythm of attention flow through you. Each flicker of the hearth, each faint scent of herbs, each subtle pulse of calm is yours to carry as you drift gently into sleep, wrapped in quiet understanding, patience, and the enduring presence of care.